Hi, Courtney here, coming to you on a beautiful fall day in Arkansas. And I had a person who watches my videos ask this question, and I thought it was such a good question. And that is, how do you know that you're making progress or that you're on the right track? And I came up with so many different things, but I try to kind of scooch them all into 5 things. And obviously it's not an exhaustive list. I'm sure there are other ways that you might know you're on track, and you can certainly list those in the comments below if you would like. But let's go over 5 ways to know you're on track. And please, if you like this kind of content, give it a thumbs up and subscribe. And behind me, you'll notice there is a box. I did not move it. I know it's very tacky looking. There's a cat sleeping in it. So if you see something pop up behind me, he probably will at some point. So the first one was that you have awareness of the problem. You kind of come to a point where you're like, okay, I'm aware, like I can't pay my rent on time, or I can't pay my mortgage on time, or there's too much debt and not enough money. And then you begin to accept it and you have action. This comes right from 12-step stuff. I'm in a support group for 12-step. If you've watched me before, and I go to a support group for people who have people in their family who have addiction and maybe some mental health issues. And one thing that we talk about a lot is the 3 A's: awareness, acceptance, and you're ready to take action. So that might mean that you realize you have a problem, you accept that it's a problem, and you're ready to sit down and really look at it. And you're ready to form an action plan, or you have formed an action plan. The next one is that you are working on creating an emergency fund, and you are eventually going to be able to handle a financial crisis or a big expense that comes up. So what that might look like is getting your first $1,000, which I know that's a common thing in the Dave Ramsey realm, and I think it's great. I mean, a person who doesn't have $1,000 versus a person who has $1,000 is going to be a lot better off if you blow a tire out, or you have an unexpected bill pop up. So definitely that first 1,000. I like my emergency fund, or I like to tell people to try to get at least a month of living expenses, like bare bones living expenses, in your emergency fund before you start paying off debt. So just pay your minimums on your debt until you have a full month's emergency fund. And realizing that an emergency is not new tires. It is not unless you've got that emergency fund and getting new tires by using it. But once you've kind of gotten into this, you need to be saving for those big expenses, putting some money back. So like if you are just starting out and you've saved your $1,000 and you blow out a tire, and the guy at the tire store or gal says you need 2 new front tires, you go ahead and you get the 2 front tires. I'm going to tell you what my kids did a lot, and it kind of worried me. But when they were younger and I was a single mom and I didn't have a lot of money, there's a place in town that has really good used tires. They're high quality, and my kids would go down there and get one for like $15. When they were younger, I had 4 driving, and it was very expensive. And so they looked at an cheaper alternative, So getting to a point where you can handle a financial crisis is one way to know that you're on the right track. Number 3 would be that you are actively working on debt payoff, or you are debt free, or you have a plan to see your net worth go up. So I have a son that's going to school to be a therapist, and he's getting his master's degree, and it's been very expensive. There's no way to be a therapist without these degrees. It's not like you can just do it, So he is, but in other areas of his life, he's trying to keep himself debt-free. So having some kind of plan to be debt-free, it might mean debt-free besides your student loan and your mortgage. It might be debt-free from everything, eventually including all of that. But knowing that you are aware of not going into more debt, or that you're taking on as little debt as possible. And where might that happen? So when I first got divorced, about a year or 2 into it, once I was getting all the debt paid off and everything, I was having a situation with my traveling and my car, and I had sold my paid off car for $11,000, and I had put a large chunk of that on a new to me car that got really good gas mileage. I never regretted doing that. I had a business and it was, handling the payment. I still want people to know that when you have a business and you're making a car payment out of that, it's not an excuse to get a new car, because that is money that would be in your pocket if it wasn't going for the vehicle. But in that situation, I did not need to have a lot of car bills. I did not need to have high gas. Gas was $4 a gallon. And I don't regret doing that. But I purchased the least expensive car that would get the job done. And I paid it off in 3 years. So if you do have to get debt because you're not quite far enough down the road where you feel like you can purchase a good used car, especially in my case, I was traveling in rural areas. It would have been very dangerous as a single woman to be broken down in some of the parts of the country I was in. Then take out as little debt as you can. So having these kind of plans around debt will eventually move you forward. So once I paid off that car, I never had any more debt at all. That was in 2015, 16, 17. I paid it off, and I never had any debt thereafter. And then we paid off the mortgage in 2022. So net worth going up, debt going down, being conscious of not getting into more debt or only getting into the least amount of debt you possibly have to in the event that you're not quite to the point where you can pay cash for things. You'll get there. You will. Number 4 is you have some kind of awareness of retirement savings. You've started saving for retirement. So I have 4 kids of my own and 2 by marriage, and I know that 2 of them have retirement savings. 2 of them, I think, are kind of thinking about it. And then I have one that is just my little free spirit artist who I just hope he gets the bills paid every month. And the other one is disabled, so that's not possible, but I'm planning on that for him. I'm taking care of that for him. So you've got money in a retirement account somewhere. If you have a 401k, you're contributing at least to get the match every month. Even if you're paying down debt, I would say still get the match. Don't completely stop retirement savings if you have a match at work. You have some kind of plan, especially if you're older. You need to do a bare bones budget and see what you would have to live off of. Go to Social Security .gov and see what your estimated Social Security check will be, and then figure out how much you're going to need to live. So a lot of old information says you need to replace your current income. That's not true. So for us, our current income is low 6 figures, just over 100,000. It varies wildly. Sometimes it's 90, sometimes it's quite a bit more depending on how busy we are. But we live on around $53,000 a year. And honestly, we paid our house off this much this year, so I'm not exactly sure. It's really been more like $3,000 a month or $36,000. And it took us a long time. We were 2 very broke single parents when we met 2 years ago. It took us a long time to get to this point. But what I did was I did inherit, or not inherit, when I got divorced, we had a 401k that we divided, and it was his, but we knew that it was ours because we had agreed that I would help pay for his college and we would have the 401k, and I say pay for it. I had a small inheritance, and that paid for us to live for 4 years, along with his parents helping a little bit, but the house that I inherited, that stuff contributed. So we divided that 401k. I never touched it. And I'm not going to go into too much with that, but I slowly, as I was a broke single mom, some years I couldn't put anything into it, but I didn't touch it. And that's what I've encouraged my kids to do. The little bit of money you have in there while my son's in school and he doesn't have one, I'm like, don't touch it. Just leave it alone. At least it's growing, or will when the market picks back up. And it will. It always does. Okay. Number 5, you live within your means. Oh, and let me go back on that just a quick moment. So once I got out of debt, except for the car, I started putting more money into it, and I ended up going with a brokerage company, Vanguard. which I do recommend. You can do Fidelity, Vanguard, or Schwab. And I got into index funds. You would want to read J.L. Collins' The Simple Path to Wealth. Index funds are pretty easy to understand, and I've been very successful with that. And I'm to the point where I can put the maximum amount in my IRA every year, and we're about to open a solo 401k. So it gets better, but I had a plan for retirement, and I know how much we have to live on. So I took the Social Security out of that, and then I looked at what we needed beyond that. So you kind of got to know, if you're older, especially if you're over 40, you really need to get on it and get a plan. Number 5 is you live within your means and you save. So to me, what living within my means is that I save first. I have a savings plan. I have a monthly budget, and the amount of money I spend comes out of that budget every month. I do not have to use credit to buy anything. I do use credit cards if you watch me, but I pay them off monthly, and I have the money in the bank to pay them off at all times. I do not float money. So what does that mean? That means if I have $2,500 on credit card, I have $2,500 in the bank to pay it. I only do it for the travel points. So that also allows me to go in and see where we're spending all of our money. We only allow ourselves maybe $100 cash a month each, sometimes $200. And with that money, we don't account for it. It's just our kind of fun money. For me, it's usually taking my kids out to eat. For my husband, I don't even know what he does with it. I don't know, don't care. So I think sometimes he takes his kids or grandkids out to eat, or he buys little things here and there with it, or he gives it to people. I don't know. We don't care. But the rest of the budgeted money, anything that we want, we make sure that we can pay for it. We're not going to have to go into debt. Our bills are paid and our savings are taken care of. That's what it means to me to live within your means. So if you're doing all 5 of those things, you are doing great. And sometimes it feels like a slog, especially when you get into this and you've done all the things that you know to do and you're like, shouldn't I be doing more? Sometimes you get to a point where you kind of got things on automatic. They're just kind of, the wheels are rolling, and you don't have to do a lot, with occasionally making some tweaks here or there. The other thing I'd like to add to this is, in the FIRE movement, Financial Independence, Retire Early, or FI movement, Financial Independence, meaning you would no longer have to work. You could live off your savings, dividends, pension, Social Security, that you would have some money to live on. One way we do that, we get to that, and look up the Pillars of FI on Google the Pillars of FI, and there's an article on the Choose FI podcast on their website about what the 10 pillars of FI are. But it's getting to what we would call comfortable middle class living, and then stopping. As your income increases, you're still living like you're in comfortable middle class. So what's the American dream, right? If you think of the American dream, what do you think? I think most people who come to this country would think of it as, I have a modest house, maybe a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. I have a yard, maybe, or just having a home that's paid for. You have a decent working car. You have all your needs are met, food, shelter, clothing. You can afford to take care of your needs. You are able to take a vacation every year. Not an excessive amount, but not on the struggle bus either. And so once you get to that point, like we built, most people, okay, where I live, there is farms everywhere. And because most people around here have lived in the same houses for years, or they were built in the 70s, they're not gargantuan. But a lot of the places around me, like if you go into other school districts that are wealthier, I live in farming country, but if you go into some of the wealthier school districts, you'll see people that have this much land and they have these ginormous houses, or they'll have 5 acres with a 4,000 square foot house and 2 people live in them. That is not solid middle class. And they may make what we make, okay? But the bank says, oh, you make $10,000 a month, so you can have a $2,500 house payment because that's 25%. No. For us, like, our house payment's never been over $1,250, and we would not do that. And we paid it off. So you're going to get to a level where you're comfortable and you're going to stop and you're going to increase your savings. So I hope this has been helpful. I so appreciate you being here. If you found value in this, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.